Hello, my name is Wesley Everman, and I'm an Extension Weed Specialist and Associate Professor at North Carolina State University. Thank you for taking the time to attend this virtual field day, and I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the things that we're seeing in soybean weed control, some of the challenges we have, as well as how to manage those challenges. Okay, so first off, when we look at our soybeans, we've been battling a lot of the same challenges. Behind me, we have Palmer Amaranth. It's been a widespread problem across the state. Well, fortunately for you guys in the Blacklands, we haven't been seeing a lot of issues with Palmer. This year we've been seeing a little bit more. I've heard a few more people call and ask, what do I do? A few more reports where we're seeing it show up in the Blacklands. Still not a widespread problem, but we need to understand what's on the radar, right? Now, overall, I think we do a pretty good job avoiding resistance. You guys have good black soil. You can grow high yielding corn crops, and corn is a nice equalizer. We take a lot of those resistant weeds out with a healthy rotation. So continue rotating your crops where you can. Sometimes we get locked into rotations for different reasons, where we have to do either continuous crops or we're rotating where we don't have a lot of different herbicide options. So keep in mind where we can tweak our program to stay ahead of that resistant weed spectrum. When we talk about managing weeds in soybean, first thing we talk about is our technologies, and then we talk about residual herbicides. We've been big proponents over the years of overlapping residuals. I've heard a lot of folks say that they've had challenges getting residual herbicides to work for them in the Blacklands. Now, I realize organic soils where you're going to have high organic matter are going to tie up a lot of these different herbicides, but we have been hearing some good success in the last couple years as people have tried, especially the flumioxazin-based programs, giving us some good residual control, extending several weeks into the season. So we want to start out with that strong residual set us up so that when we have a spring like we had this year, where you're planting for sometimes 2 months or 3 months, it gives you flexibility to come back with your post program. Even if you don't have resistant weeds, you want that nice foundation to give you a little bit of breathing room. And we know, from these last couple of years, that's a primary need. Now, include that residual herbicide in your post to try to help give us a little bit more residual and control heading into canopy. Again, a lot of that's going to depend on environment. If we have dry weather, those pre's aren't going to work as well, but just having that little bit of insurance can go a long way in the right conditions. So again, that strong residual up front, whether it's flumioxazin or sulfentrazone based, we want that PPO in there. Even if we've seen some PPO resistance, it's going to give us a little bit of control. And then including that group 15 in there. That group 15 herbicide really picks up the pigweeds, those small seeded broadleaves, and our grasses. We see a lot of grass issues in the Blacklands, especially along those ditch banks, right? Creeping up out. So it's going to help you out a little bit with those different species. Another one for you guys to consider, heavier soils, you'll be able to use metribuzin a little bit more than your neighbors to the east. So you have the organic matter to keep that from really being taken up by the soybean and causing issues, but we still want to follow best management practices with that metribuzin. So plant those soybeans a little deeper, look for a variety that is tolerant so that we don't see that injury if you get that heavy rainfall. So consider these different options, and then also consider what program you're using post-emergence. We really have 4 herbicides we talk about for most of our problem weeds in soybean. We got our PPOs, right? We can use those in any soybean system. We've got Liberty for Liberty Link and Enlist soybeans. We have Enlist, obviously, for Enlist soybeans, and then the different dicamba products for Extend beans. Okay, right now we cannot apply Liberty in those dicamba beans, so keep that in mind. Enlist, we can do Liberty as well as the 2,4-D products. So Try to rotate those where you can year to year. You're going to have a tough time in season. Hopefully you're taking some pressure off those PPO inhibitors, but choose wisely, I guess is the sage advice I can give. Make sure we're set up so that we can use these products for years to come. I'm going to introduce a graduate student of mine who comes from the Midwest. He's worked on different pigweeds for most of his graduate career. He worked on water hemp there in the Midwest, has come to North Carolina, stepped right into working with water hemp here as we found it, has also worked with some Palmer amaranth and resistance issues there, as well as some emerging issues with red root pigweed. So I wanted to give him a few minutes to go over some of the stuff he's seen and discuss with you and present to you what we need to be watching for. Now I'll say up front, and he'll stress it too, these aren't issues in the Blacklands right now, but you need to pay attention to what's going on in the rest of the state to make sure that you're not letting these come in and get a foothold and become an issue for you down the road. So with that, here's Eric Jones, a PhD graduate student in our program here at NC State.
Hi, I'm Eric Jones. I'm a graduate student with Dr. Everman. Like he mentioned, I'm from the Midwest, Iowa to be particular, where the primary weed is water hemp. And during my master's degree, I worked with water hemp and we looked at populations that were 5-way herbicide resistant. So when I came to North Carolina, it was great to get away from water hemp. However, when I got here, I was informed that we did see some new populations of water hemp starting to pop up in the state that were brought to the Midwest by vehicles and machinery. What we have found in North Carolina now, in the western part of the state, as well as just north of the Sound of the Blacklands, is we're seeing populations that are resistant to the ALS herbicides, such as Harmony and Pursuit, to atrazine, to glyphosate, to the PPO herbicides, such as Reflex and Cobra. And it may be a segregating population from susceptible to resistant, or it could be product dependent, the HPPD inhibiting herbicides. So we're potentially looking at a 5-way resistant water hemp population that are starting to inhabit North Carolina. From that, when we started to look around the different parts of the state, another problem weed started to pop up: red root pigweed. Now we're starting to see populations in the western part of the state, as well as just north of the Sound, that are resistant to our ALS herbicides, as well as in the west, we're starting to see a population that could be segregating from susceptible to resistant to glyphosate. And again, just north of the Sound from here in the Blacklands, we're starting to see a population segregating from susceptible to resistant to the PPO inhibiting herbicides. Now that's not even my project. My project's being funded by the North Carolina Soybean Growers Association, where I'm going to be developing an assay that we can get fast turnaround to the farmers in North Carolina if they have a herbicide-resistant pigweed in their farm. Now we know with the Palmer amaranth, we already have a 3-way resistant populations that's widespread across the state to the ALS, glyphosate, and PPO herbicides.
All right, so as you can hear, we've got a few different things going on that Eric's working on. He's been very busy his first couple years. He's gonna have a year or two left. Hopefully get this all pulled together for us on the amaranths. So keep in mind, these residual herbicides and the post programs I talked about are gonna be effective on controlling these resistant populations, as well as giving us residual and keeping them out if they happen to come in on equipment or some other way. Another thing we need to be thinking about is common ragweed. We've identified a 3-way resistant population up in the northeast part of the state, north of the Sound. And we know it's resistant to glyphosate, PPO, and ALS inhibitors. So we run out of options in a number of our different programs for soybeans, okay? So we can only go to Liberty Link, dicamba, or 2,4-D tolerance. We don't want to over-rely on any of these. All 3 are very effective. So again, try to rotate these chemistries. We can't really rely on those group 15s for our pre or our residual in season. So we have to look more to relying on some of those PPO inhibitors, even though we see resistance, as well as that metribuzin. So keep these in mind as you're planning your programs going forward, and keep an eye out this fall and later this summer when you're scouting your fields, looking for those different pigweeds that are surviving, looking for the ragweed, and give us a call or your county agent a call if you have issues, questions, or concerns. So again, thank you for your time. I hope you have a good rest of the summer.